Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned earlier, we heard from Roland von Marburg, that's easy for me to say, last year, and today we hear from the other side. The von Marburg family up at Albury are stalwarts of the pro-life movement. They are truly friends of the babies. They are sensational. And it is great today to have Dr. Roland Marburg here, a man who has, I'd have to say, suffered a fair bit as a result of his conviction, his knowledge that babies must be protected. Roland Marburg, von Marburg rather, is a bloke that we all should admire. He too has got the courage of his convictions, he's got guts, and he deserves our applause today. Roland.
Thank you, Bernie. Thank you. To our religious, to our honourable guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for coming today. Thank you for being part of this event. It's wonderful to be here as one of the older people at this event. And thank you for being such a great witness to life. Thank you for choosing to pray and to help and to persevere with such a great cause. We're reminded of the words of the prophet Isaiah when we gather like this, that they who wait upon the Lord will renew their strength. They will mount up with wings like eagles. They will run and not be weary. They will walk and not be faint. Thank you for walking today. Thanks, Bernie, for the honour of talking to you. About myself, I'm a husband, obviously, to my beautiful wife, Anna, a father of 8 beautiful children who have their challenges. If Gus is out there, take your hands out of your pocket when your father's talking, Gus. I'm a practicing Catholic because I'm practicing to get better. I'm a surgeon based in Albury, and I studied and later lectured at the medical home of IVF in Australia, and indeed the world. A university that has produced some of the most prolific abortionists in this country. My schoolmate and flatmate is a brilliant and eminent person and is now a protege of Peter Singer and Professor of Bioethics at Oxford University. Well, Anna and I don't quite live in Oxford, but we live in Albury. And we've joined a group called the Helpers, or the Helpers of God's Precious Infants. And we pray, and we help, and we persevere. For over 5 years, we've prayed outside an abortion clinic in Albury with a small but dedicated and modest and peaceful group of people, a wonderful group of people. And in that time, our small group has almost halved the number of abortions in that clinic. That's the equivalent of a primary school each year in our town that don't die. And Anna and I are godparents to some of those children, and I don't say that with any personal pride. In fact, I use it as an opportunity to show what even a sinner like I can achieve with God's help. Because we pray and we help and we persevere. But the Honourable Mr. Finn has wanted me to talk about the health effects and costs of abortion in this country. Well, I could tell you that there are 100,000 abortions a year in Australia, but 30 to 40% of Australian women have had an abortion. That 10% of women will suffer an immediate complication of their abortion. That 20% of women will suffer a long-term complication of their abortion. that women who have had an abortion are at least twice as likely to suicide, to suffer depression, to suffer anxiety, to suffer substance abuse, to suffer sexual dysfunction, to suffer premature delivery and fetal abnormalities with their subsequent pregnancies, and probably to suffer a higher incidence of breast cancer. I could tell you that a study of pregnancy-associated deaths published by the American Journal of Obstetrics and Gynecology demonstrated that the overall death rate is almost 3 times higher in women who have had abortions in the previous 12 months compared to women who carried their pregnancy to term. And this is before we start to factor in the notorious underreporting of complications and deaths amongst women who have had abortions in Australia. We have a local doctor in Albury-Wodonga who repeatedly lies to our community and to anyone else who will listen, explaining that it's safer to have an abortion than to be pregnant.
What rubbish.
He also has a medical comrade who has been quoted on the local radio explaining that pregnancy should be treated as a disease.
Shame.
And it's no prize for guessing what sort of industry these doctors are in.
Yeah.
But I could bombard you with statistic after statistic about the ill effects of abortion on our beautiful women. And I'd be preaching to the converted. The problem in Australia is that most women don't choose to have an abortion. They have an abortion because they feel they have no choice. It would not matter if abortionists could show that not one woman suffered a complication or died after an abortion, because her child always dies. That is why abortion is wrong. That is why we are here at a march for the babies. And that is why we need to pray and help and persevere. So what sort of a country allows the lives of 100,000 children to be terminated every year? Why do we kill 100,000 Australian children every year? What is the cost to our community of killing 100,000 Australian children? Pope Francis recently echoed the thoughts of most major world faiths when he said the right to life is the first among human rights. Saint Mother Teresa of Calcutta explained that any country that accepts abortion is not teaching its people love. It's teaching them that they can use violence to get what they want. That is why the greatest destroyer of love and peace is abortion. Even the United Nations recognises through its Declaration of Rights of the Child that every child needs special safeguards and legal protection, both before and after birth. But no, here in Victoria, we have special rules. Here in Victoria, under Dan Andrews, who is then Health Minister and now Premier, we have essentially created a government-sponsored protection racket for the abortion industry and its benefactors, like the IVF industry, to rake in billions of dollars. These are industries driven by greed, not ethics. They are industries driven by death, not healthcare. We all know that there are great problems in the world and in our families. There can be discord, there can be separation, there can be poverty, there can be war. But the answer to these problems is not killing our children. If you really want to know what the cost of abortion is, it was actually told to us, believe it or not, this week in Canberra. Under the banner National Health Crisis, and it is, they discussed the problem of stillbirth in Australia. Tragically, we have about 1,700 stillbirths a year in Australia. That's about 5 per day. They estimate that about 30% of the stillbirths are preventable. And PricewaterhouseCoopers did an independent study of what the death of an unborn child costs. And they told us that these 1,700 deaths cost the Australian community $140 million a year. Well, if that's a national health crisis, then we have a catastrophe. Because we have 100,000 abortions a year in Australia. That's not 5 a day, that's 270 a day. They are 100% preventable.
Yep.
And the cost to our community is $8 billion a year.
Stop funding them.
That's more than 50 times the issue of stillbirth, as tragic as it is. And a significant chunk of these profits go to the abortion industry. So what do we do about such evil? Well, as anybody who's watched Lord of the Rings 75 times like I've had to, you ride out to meet them.
Yep.
Our armour is our prayer, our hope, our help, and our perseverance.
Yep.
We persevere until we have a community that recognises that our women should be loved and not objectified.
Yep.
We persevere until every child is valued.
Yep.
We persevere until every child is protected.
Yep.
We persevere until every voiceless member has a voice.
Yep.
We don't put our light under our bed, and we don't avoid the problem. We pray, we help, and we persevere.
Yep.
God bless you.